His name echoes through centuries. His ideas shaped the foundation of philosophy, yet the man behind the legend remains an enigma. This is the untold life of Socrates. Socrates was born in 470 BCE in Athens, a city at the height of its power. But unlike the aristocrats or the noblemen of his time, Socrates came from a humble beginning. His father, Sophroniscus, was a stonesman who worked tirelessly to shape stone into beauty, and his mother, Phaenarete, was a midwife who helped bringing life into the world. First, let's talk about his childhood. So, even as a boy, Socrates was different. He was curious, thoughtful, and fearless in asking questions others avoided. These early conversations planted the seed of his future philosophy. So, one day his father was creating a magnificent statue of Athena for the temple, and Socrates, he was barely 10 years old, stood by and watched. So he asked, "Father, how do you know where to strike the stone to make it beautiful?" And his father paused for a moment and then replied, "I don't just see the stone, my son. I see the statue hidden within it. Every strike is guided by what the stone can become." So, this was a kind of an answer that didn't satisfy the curious boy. So, he spent the next few days studying his father's work, observing every detail. As the statue began to take shape, Socrates asked another question. But what if the stone doesn't want to become what you see? What if it has its own shape? His father again laughed and said, "The stone doesn't decide, the sculptor does. That's why we must learn to master it." Upon hearing this, young Socrates asked another question. But what if the sculptor is wrong? What if the stone would have been something beautiful as something else? Again, all these questions surprised his father, and he replied, "Then perhaps the sculptor should learn to listen to the stone before he strikes it." So, as Socrates grew, his focus shifted from the physical work to intellectual pursuits. Unlike others, he didn't seek wealth, power, or fame. What he pursued was wisdom. See, Socrates believed that true knowledge came from questioning over and over. His method, now known as Socratic method, involved simplifying and questioning assumptions to expose the truth. So, Socrates received two gifts from his parents. One was the hand of a craftsman, and the other was the mind of a midwife. As he grew, Socrates became known for his ability to, quote unquote, listen to the stone of the human nature, asking questions that reveal the potential and flaws within others. So let's talk about the controversial student of Socrates. So among his students were both admirers and controversial figures like Alcibiades, whose betrayal would later haunt Socrates. You see, Alcibiades, one of the most notable students of Socrates, though their relationship was a bit complex, while on the other hand, Alcibiades himself struggled with ambition, self-indulgence, and he had a thirst for power. So, during the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE, between Athens and Sparta, Alcibiades initially supported Athens and proposed an ambitious but risky military campaign against Sicily. Shortly after the campaign began, he was accused of violating religious statutes, the Hermes, and mocking sacred Eleusinian mysteries. Fearing for his life, he joined Sparta. So in Sparta, Alcibiades betrayed Athens by advising them on how to counter Athenian strategies. Alcibiades' betrayal didn't just stop there. After a while, he left Sparta as well due to his personal blunders, and then he fled to Persia, where he served as an advisor to the governors of Persia. Then he later returned to Athens, where he regained the trust and briefly led the Athenian forces to several victories, then again fell from the favor again due to political schemes. Now, while his betrayal was primarily political and military, they cast a shadow on Socrates' reputation as well. You see, Socrates had been a mentor to him, attempting to steer him towards a life of virtue and wisdom. However, Alcibiades' actions highlighted the failure of Socrates' teaching to reform him fully. When Socrates was later put on a trial in 399 BCE, one of the accusations against him was that he had corrupted the youth of Athens. And Alcibiades was often cited as an example, and his treacherous actions were seen as evidence that Socrates' influence might have led his students astray. So, now talking about the trial of Socrates. In 399 BCE, Socrates was charged with corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. But was this the real reason? Well, historians believe that his trial was deeply political, driven by his criticism of democracy and his association with controversial figures, like I mentioned earlier. So, Socrates refused to compromise his principles. He declared, "I would rather die having spoken in my manner than live in yours." He was sentenced to death by hemlock. And in his final moments, Socrates remained true to his beliefs. Today, Socrates' philosophy continues to inspire. From classroom to courtrooms, his legacy lives on in every debate and every moment of self-reflection. From the philosophy of Socrates, many other major philosophies originated, like Stoicism. But Stoicism isn't an easy concept to grasp. So for that reason, I have made another video to simplify it, so you can watch it over here.